Welcome to the Online Great Books podcast, brought to you by OnlineGreatBooks.com, where we talk about the good life, the great books, great conversation, and great ideas. I'm Scott Hambrick.
I'm Karl Shute.
And today on the Online Great Books podcast, we didn't do a show last week. I just couldn't do it.
There were some world events that got in the way.
Yeah, I just couldn't do it. I was just too distracted, getting over a flu or some such. Just couldn't do it. So sorry about that, listener. But today, we're going to do the show that we were going to do. So we've had 2 weeks to think about it. So it'll be extra something.
Well, I had a week to forget everything.
I know. The epic poem, I don't know if it's a poem, actually. It's verse. The Song of Roland. It's a song, right? It's not a poem.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a poem. It rhymes.
It's around the Norman Conquest time. It was written maybe 1066, 1100, 1150. Nobody really knows. And I'm not sure anybody knows who wrote it either. And it was written originally in Anglo-Norman, I saw. Whatever the heck that is. And then, of course, our genius friend, Dorthy Sayers, who speaks all the languages, and she doesn't know them. She just stares at the page until the words jump out, and then she writes translations for normal people to read. Translated the one I read, Dorthy Sayers.
One slight correction, although you're going to yell at me. It's Sayers. She's plural.
Sayers, okay, yeah. It's fine.
Yeah.
So if you went over to dinner at her place, and her husband was there, we're going to dinner at the Sayers'. Is it one of those deals?
Yes.
Is that how you say it? I always hate
the
that.
Sayerses.
Yeah, I hate that. The Schutzes.
Well, the worst thing is when people make the plural with the apostrophe S.
Oh, right.
We're going to go over to the Hambrick apostrophe S. The Hambricks. The Hambricks what? The Hambricks house? The Hambricks compound?
Maybe.
So, just, dear listener, you should know that you do not make plurals with an apostrophe S.
That's a possessive.
Right, you make the possessive with the apostrophe S. And so I'll drive through neighborhoods around here, and the houses will say something like,
oh,
it'll say like the Smith's house, but it'll be apostrophe S, and I'm just mocking you in my mind as I'm driving by, saying, no, it's not. They've got the plural wrong.
Goodness. Oh, you know what?
I'm sorry.
We're going to open enrollment at Online Great Books on December the 7th, Pearl Harbor Day. So if you go there, use the discount code OGB podcast, then Karl gets a few shekels, and we know where you came from, and you get a discount. And if you don't use a discount code, you don't get a discount. What is the discount? I don't know.
It's something.
It's something.
It is a finite amount.
It is a finite amount. You get a finite amount off for the first 3 months, and it is not insignificant. I think it's like, I don't know. I don't remember, Karl. I'm sorry. But, go to onlinegreatbooks.com/podcast, use the discount code OGB podcast, and then when you put it when it's in your shopping cart, it'll tell you what the discount is. It's not $1. Yeah. It's either, it's either $15 a month or it's 25%. I can't remember which. There you go.
Yeah, come join us. So I'll tell you, I had a seminar. I've had a bunch of seminars this week because we had to shuffle around because of one of us had a few difficulties to deal with. And so I picked up an Odyssey Seminar yesterday, and I don't usually do this one, so I got to see all these people and fight with them for 2 hours. It was great fun.
Were you fighting with the suitors and Penelope or the seminar members?
No, I was fighting with the seminar members.
Okay.
Nicely, though, because they all seemed to think that Odysseus was a wonderful person. And because they thought that, I had to take the opposite position.
Right, because that's what you have to do.
Right. If they're all unified, I'm not comfortable with that. So we had some fun and talked about it. And you have to trust me, this is fun.
Yeah, it is.
The seminars are where it's at. You come in, you could read the books on your own, except you probably won't. Okay, so you get from us accountability and the books shipped to you. But you also get that seminar, which is a big deal, where you sit or stand for 2 hours on Zoom and talk with actual human beings about the things that you read.
We had another guy quit
Oh, no.
We had another guy quit. When, people leave from time to time, they get laid off or mom goes into hospice and we just don't fit anymore. And I understand that. And then sometimes they leave for other reasons. And we always ask them to please fill out this one question exit survey, which is kind of like, I think the question is, what can we do better or something like that? And he says, the seminar was extremely disorganized from my viewpoint. While I value open discussion, I also value structure and learning from experts who know the material very well. The seminar I attended did not represent that. I'm only giving constructive feedback. Well, this guy's a good faith guy. He is. But we don't teach. While Karl is probably actually at least sitting next to the experts, if not an expert in this stuff, we're not there to teach. We're to lead seminar and do an inquiry with our seminar members. And it's not just about the book, though, is it? It's about practicing rhetoric where you listen carefully and you speak convincingly. There's a lot more going on than just copying down notes that the expert is spouting at you.
Oh, gosh. I'm getting... Roland, just hang tight. We'll get to you. When I actually taught in actual schools, it's terrible. So you come in there with a plan. Lots of the other professors would actually have plans that they cared very deeply about. In other words, they wanted to have you leave their class thinking a certain way. Yeah. I don't think much of that. I didn't care what you thought when you left my class. I cared that you thought.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay? So I'm not pushing my own political theories, if you could figure them out. I never pushed them in a class. Nobody knew what I thought. I wanted you to think, and then I wanted to examine what you thought. For me, it's all like Socrates. Socrates describes himself as a midwife. He's helping you give birth to your own thoughts. And I want to make sure those are well-formed and make sense. But to sit passively, we're not for that guy. I'm sorry. We're not that structured. If you've listened to the podcast, I argue with myself all the time. If Scott weren't here, I could still do it.
We should do that. That sounds like a great show. What would I have to do?
Just nod. I don't know.
But do I have to read the text?
And on the one hand, so I argue with myself all the time. So Socrates is my intellectual model. He said, because his friend got the oracle at Delphi to declare that there was nobody wiser than Socrates. And Socrates had to figure out what this meant. And people get this wrong all the time. They think that he figured out that it meant he didn't know anything. He never says he didn't know anything.
No.
Never, ever says that. What he says is, the difference is, when I do not know, neither do I think that I know. And in that, I'm wiser than other people who think that they know things when they do not. So, I know some stuff, but I also know when I don't know. Like, I'll just go back to one of my favorite shows that we did was the essay on distributism by Hilaire Belloc. Okay, so you come into the show, maybe you've got your political ideas already baked into you, and you read Belloc and like, gosh, I don't know anymore. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. That means you're now thinking.
Yeah, I want people in the seminars. I don't lead nearly so many as you, but when I do, I hope I ask a question that makes them consider an angle that they hadn't. And when it's all over, I want the seminar members to know why they believe what they believe, which is not to steer them. So there's no teaching going on. Yeah, it's just not the same thing. And by the way, how do you teach the Song of Roland? Like, what does that even mean?
No, how would I teach a Song of Roland? I would have some ideas beforehand, and I would say, well, this is clearly an example of a crusade propaganda. I would put it in a box, and then I would teach you the box. And then I would test you on the box, and you would get a good grade and a pat on the head and maybe a cookie and a glass of milk if you responded back to me in the way that I'd prepared the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Okay. And the PowerPoint's probably going to reflect my preoccupations. Okay. I kept my stuff under my hat. I didn't let my students at the university know what I thought. The rest of them didn't do that. It was very clear what they thought. And you would read Roland as, you would get a Marxist interpretation of Roland if you took it from some of the people that I knew.
Well, any politics aside, if a teacher is teaching the Song of Roland and it's exam time, whether it's a blue book or test or whatever, what are you really being tested over? You're being tested over the instructor's notes, not actually the Song of Roland. We're all good enough, doggone it. We've got the text. I know phonics. I can sound out words I don't know, and I have a dictionary, and I've got a yellow pad and some sharp pencils. It's all right, So, yeah, we don't teach there.
No, and so I'd much rather hear, rather than tell you what you ought to think about it, I would much rather witness you responding to it. So when Roland finally blows the horn, tell me about that. I learned something.
I'm mad about that, by the way. It's going to be good.
That he didn't blow it on time?
It's dumb.
Well, it was his prowess. He was. He didn't want to call for help too early. But there's insights you get. Every seminar I run, I learn something.
Yeah. So this has consequences outside of onlinegreatbooks.com/podcast. If you want to start a group at home, you don't have to be an expert. You've just got to be honest and inquisitive and careful. And you could start a group at home. Get you and 4 of your buddies and a pot of coffee or some cheese and crackers or whatever the heck it is, and a table where you can all see each other and get after it. Yeah. Don't teach. You don't need an expert. It's just you need to have a spirit of inquiry.
Oh, right. The experts bug me a lot. The notion that you can't talk about something unless you're an expert. So I can't even approach Roland until I learn something about chansons de geste. I'm not going to pronounce the French right. I'm never going to do it.
I refuse
But these like songs of great deeds. I need to become an expert before I can talk about it. No. Were the audience experts? Was it written for experts? And I'll tell you more. This cult of the expert that we have, it's destructive of human life.
It is.
What is a human being? A human being is a rational animal. Okay? I'll go further. You have a divine spark of reason. You can think. You have access to reality just like I do. You might see things that I don't see. Heck, I think it's Averroes, the Arab philosopher Averroes, went so far as to say there is one mind that we all share because we can all access truth. I'm not quite sure he's right, but I can see where he's coming from. So you sit in your group. Everybody there has got as much access to the order of the universe and truth as you do.
Yeah.
And if we're just going to sit and listen to an expert, what we're saying is only that one has the access. And that's BS. And how would you even know he was an expert unless you also can repeat the same thoughts that the expert is? If you can't see it as well, you can't even tell if anyone is an expert. And then it's just rhetoric and the will to power.
That keeps recurring.
Yeah, that's one of my preoccupations.
I'm proud of our folks. There's been some stuff in Slack lately. This probably sounds like an ad to people. I don't care. I'm talking to you about it, Karl. I hope they like listening. I'm really proud of what's been going on in Slack lately. Did you see Jay talking about Marcuse?
Mm-hmm.
One of our members has been reading a little Marcuse, which our program isn't reading right now, but on his own he picked it up, and he said he wondered, from what he had been reading, Marcuse didn't make it clear to him what he would have to say about extending his notions of justice to kind of odd groups like Mennonites or Amish, or maybe some isolated tribes from the Amazon. Conversation ensued. And then, of course, all of us are influenced at Online Great Books, end up being influenced by Socrates and Plato. We're good people. And once you read them, if you're not influenced, you need to go back to the beginning and start again. Everybody's like, well, if Marcuse thinks there's such a thing as justice, then it has to be universally applied, or you're not being just. So, the Mennonites and the Amish aren't excluded. It was interesting, Karl. Some of the people that replied to that thread took the stance that the Amish, they didn't say this explicitly, but I was reading it and I was like, oh, wait a minute. This guy thinks the Amish or the Mennonites are marginal or impoverished or disadvantaged in a Marcusean sense. And and the whole time when Jay posed that problem, I was like, yeah, they're so privileged. They've got all this stuff. They're like wealthier than anybody, Like I was thinking that they would be taken from rather than given to in the Marcuse world, but not everybody saw it that way. I thought it was cool.
Yeah, so that's the sort of things that happen and can happen once you give yourself permission to think. you can do this stuff. Maybe you'll do it with us.
Oh, hell, don't. I mean, we'd love to have you, but start a group at home. That's the best. But if you can't, because, you live in Maskville or whatever, check us out. What about this Roland character? What about this thing?
This thing. So this Song of Roland. Roland is a knight. This is a knightly tale. This is a tale of chivalry, of brave soldiers fighting impossible odds against the Paynim hordes. So we'll have to do a little history. So this is actually historical. Charlemagne's, was it his grandfather?
Yeah.
Is a man named, well, they're all named Karl. Karl Martel, Charles Martel, Charles the Hammer.
The Hammer.
Mm-hmm. And Charles Martel, he actually was not the king. He was like the steward of the castle, because the Merovingians, the French kings, they wouldn't do anything. But the Muslim expansion through North Africa had gotten all the way to Spain in a very short period of time and was pressing into the rest of Europe, and would have taken it over, and then history would have been very different, extremely different, except for Charles Martel, who fought them off at the Battle of Tours in 740, something like that. Very, very early in the Middle Ages.
The first Reconquista.
Yeah, and managed to stop that, but Spain was Muslim for a long time. In fact, all the way until Ferdinand and Isabella. They're the ones that complete the reconquest for Christendom in 1492, I think, or thereabouts, right around the time of Columbus. So Charlemagne, I believe, is his grandson, Karl the Great, who is a Frankish king. And if you don't know anything about him, you should go look him up. This is early. What are his dates? I have to look him up.
Oh, crap.
Pardon me. You're going to hear my keyboard clatter as I go look on the internets.
Yeah, I want to talk about his name. He's Charles the Great. In Latin, he's what? Carolus Magnus?
Mm-hmm.
You might bastardize that, and you might say Charlemagne. Dorthy Sayers in this thing, she kind of keeps the Anglo-Norman usage, and she'll call him
Carloman, Carlon.
Yeah. So she, the names have different cases in this Anglo-Norman language. So everybody in here, to my modern English eye, is 5 appellations, 5 different names. It's pretty tough for me. Probably not for you and your weird Latin head. It probably just moved right along for you. So, for example, the first line she says in her translation says, "Carlon the king, our emperor Charlemagne." Same person, 2 names.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and it would make sense in the poetic line. You do the same thing in Homer.
Yeah.
What it means to be an inflected language is the word takes different forms depending on its function in the language. We have very little of that in English. So he, him. That's an example. Who and whom, if you still use whom.
I'm ready for that to die.
Yeah, I kind of like it. It's like a sign of power.
Right.
Do you still use whom?
Power. When's Charlemagne's reign? Did you find it?
All right. So I was looking up Charles Martel, 688 to 741. He was the mayor of the palace. I think of him kind of like, if you read Lord of the Rings, he's kind of like Denethor, because the actual king wouldn't do anything. So Charles Martel defeated a Muslim invasion of Aquitaine at the Battle of Tours. This was a preservation of Western culture. His son becomes the actual king, because they get rid of the Merovingians. And then that's Pepin the Short. And then we have Charlemagne, Charles the Great, who lived from 748 to 814. So you have to think, I guess this is before the Vikings, but this is a recovery of European civilization before the Vikings start hitting really hard.
What does that mean, Karl? What are you talking about?
I mean, they started reading books again.
Right.
And doing great art. Right. You can go to I think his chapel or his throne room. You can go see it. It's pretty cool. I don't think Charles himself was very literate.
I don't think he was.
But he promoted learning. Lots of interesting things. He was crowned on Christmas Day. They ambushed him on Christmas Day in the year 800 and named him Holy Roman Emperor. don't think he knew that the Pope was going to do this to him, which caused some problems because there was still an emperor in the East, a Roman emperor in Constantinople. But if you ever hear about the Holy Roman Empire, this is the beginning. Everybody lays claim to that heritage. They're going back to Charlemagne. He encouraged learning all through his domain. Alcuin, I think, was his friend, who is the leader on that. Here is something that you owe to Charlemagne. Okay, so take a look at any kind of piece of paper that you have in front of you with text on it. And you note that there are uppercase and lowercase. Okay? The lowercase letters are Carolingian minuscule. In other words, lowercase letters were invented by the monks and scholars working for Charlemagne.
Yeah, the Carolingian minuscule.
Yeah.
He required a standardization of font and hand. When you go see old books, pre-typeset books, and the font is so lovely and uniform, that's because he said that was a good idea. You've got to figure out what the darned alphabet is and what the shape of the letters are before you can figure out the spelling bit, right? Spelling didn't really get standardized until, 1600s and maybe even late 1700s. So that's a big technological advancement.
Mm-hmm.
I just was looking at pictures of his throne. We have his sword, too. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, it is. Can you imagine?
So your image of the Middle Ages might be, my kids like a show that I hate. I object to it, and I don't want to watch it with them. It's called Horrible Histories. It's a comedy show. It's trying to show you all the funny stuff. Like, apparently William the Conqueror's body exploded after he died. They were watching it, and it had so much gas in it, it exploded. And so Horrible Histories takes all the worst bits of history and amplifies it, so kids like it. It's all about the gross stuff.
Right.
I don't like it because it gives you the wrong idea of what these people did. You think that they're just a bunch of primitive screwheads that they can't do anything. No, go look up the Carolingian octagon, the chapel in Aachen, and take a look at that thing and see this is high culture from the year 800 in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Things are not as dark in the Dark Ages. They get a bit darker when the Vikings come and cause everybody to have to flee. At least everybody on the coast and in Ireland.
Where do you think the notion of a Dark Ages came from? That notion, I think, is probably, somebody's made a study of this and can correct me, but I'm going to say that that's about a 150-year-old notion, right? That the lights went out. Like William Manchester wrote a book about this. When did that come up?
I think it might be a little earlier than that. Winners Write History.
Mm.
I think you might trace it to the Spanish Armada and the English beating the Spanish.
Okay.
And having to establish the Catholic Spanish, and the continent must be somehow dark and dim in the new light of learning of the Northern European Enlightenment. I think it's an Enlightenment thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there you go, right? You self-anoint your progressive movement. The Enlightenment, then it has to be in contrast to what? The Endarkenment.
The Endarkenment, yes.
Yeah. A World Lit Only by Fire, William Manchester, yeah. Which is a pretty good book.
Yeah, but it wasn't as dark as...
Of course not.
As everybody says it was. And Charlemagne was a bright point for a while. Now, this story is not... It's barely historical, but you need a little bit of the background. There was a Charlemagne. They do fight in Muslim Spain. Whether it's important for them to do probably depends on what you think, of Western civilization. But they did it. There was a Roland who did get ambushed on the way out and killed. Everything else in this story is probably not true. Or at least it's poetic. Yeah. It's a couple hundred years after the facts, whatever they were. It's romantic and epic and thrilling and gets probably most of the details wrong.
Yeah, who cares? I don't. I loved it.
Yeah, it's fun, but so the Muslim hordes, the Paynim hordes, well, whoever wrote this thing didn't know anything about them, and gets the name of Muhammad wrong, and adds a couple other gods that they worship, and
yeah,
Termagant and Apollyon and Mahund.
Mahund, yeah.
So it's like he knows that the author knows that there are Muslims, but he's never met one, and he has no idea what they believe.
Is that
So it's like what it's like. We talked about this with Riders of the Purple Sage. If you're a Mormon, you read Riders of the Purple Sage, you might be slightly offended. If you are a Catholic and read pretty much anything, you might be offended, like the Da Vinci Code.
right?
As your beliefs are caricatured, you're made to be the bad guy. Anyway, that's in there. Although the soldiers on the enemy side are portrayed pretty well.
Yeah. Oh, so Charlemagne and his thousands in his army are in what we come to know as Spain, and pretty much hang a whooping on Marsilion
of Saragossa.
A Saracen king, a Spanish Muslim. They're tired of it. Everybody's tired of it. They've been killing each other with hammers and sharp pieces of metal for months and months and months. Everybody's tired of it. And Marsilion gets counsel from his advisor, Blancandrin.
Close enough.
I don't know, Blancandrin. Blancandrin. And he says, hey, you need to go parlay with this guy. You need to sue for peace and get the best terms you can here. So Marsilion sends envoy to Charlemagne, says, hey, uncle, I give up. I'll convert to Catholicism. I will send hostages to live at court with you, and I would like to retain control of my lands, and I will kick upstairs. Right? It's all a mob thing, right? So you got to pay percentage upstairs.
It's It's a fealty thing.
Right. That's what I said.
This is feudalism.
Right. He's got to kick up, but he's going to kick upstairs. I love the hostage thing. We need to do that again.
Send hostages?
Yeah. So, you go to war with your neighbor and you come to peaceful terms, or maybe you send hostages before you go to war to prevent it, right? Like, hey, I'm going to send 3 of my kids and a bunch of the Duke's kids and so on, and they're going to live at court with you. And then if I mess up, you can just, you can do whatever you're going to do because you have some of my family members there. It's my understanding that they weren't tortured to put in like a prison camp or anything. They lived at court. I mean, these are your neighboring nobleman's family members, and they live at court with the foreign nation. That's a great idea.
If you watched that horrible, horrible, terrible, no good show, Game of Thrones, there's a lot of that, of hostages living in other people's palaces.
Yeah, so he's going to send hostages. It's great.
We were talking about this in a...
Skin in the game, man.
Yeah. So was reading Thucydides on Tuesday. I don't know, earlier this week. It's all blending together. And all these cities are fighting each other, and the treaties never stick. And we were trying to figure out why the treaties don't stick. Nobody's going to keep a treaty if it's not in their interest.
Yeah.
And so how do you get treaties to stick? If you both believe in the same God, you can appeal to a vow taken before God, and that might make the treaty stick. But this is another thought. If you have hostages, if I've got 10 of your best people living in my palace, and you care about them, you won't go to war with me.
And if I've got 10 of your best people living in my palace, if I harm them unduly, you're going to come after me. But I also have to worry about them conniving to overthrow me and mess me up. It cuts all sorts of ways.
Well, they might become Frenchified.
And they might become Frenchified. And they will probably marry who they're around. So later on, by the time you get to the Habsburgs, they're just marrying their kids off to, all the nobility of Europe is intermarried. And it's not really hostages now. It's...
Have you seen my chin?
Are you going to tell me you have a Habsburg chin?
I don't know. I have a big chin, so I'm going to lay claim to the throne of Austria.
I wish you would. You have my fealty.
Noble service, nobly given. Will be nobly rewarded. So they're going to send these people off. The catch is they're not planning to actually submit.
Now, wait a minute. I thought he was actually going to submit. The way I read it, and by the way, I this was hard for me. This was hard. It's not very long, so that's good. But it was hard for me. I'm probably wrong, but the way I read it was up front, it was an honest attempt to sue for peace. And then the bad guy, whatever his name is, Ganelon. So the Saracen king or the Muslim king sends a peace envoy to Charlemagne. They hear him out. They usher him out of the room, and Charlemagne and his advisors discuss what to do. And Roland, his Lancelot, and his best soldier, says, "Hey, send Ganelon to go back to talk to them and cut the final deal." Ganelon thinks that Roland is trying to get him killed, which I don't know.
Well, let's go back a little bit. So, in stanza 4. Blancandrin's got the plan, which is we're going to send them the offer. They'll go home to France. The time will pass, the trysted hour elapse. No news of us, no message will he have. Fierce is the king, a cruel-hearted man. Our surety's heads, the hostages' heads, he'll smite off with an axe. Better their heads should fall into their laps than that fair Spain should fall from out our hands. So they're going to renege on the deal.
Well, wait a minute. I saw it as, well, that was the deal. They were going to retain those Spanish lands, and he was going to pay, a feudal tithe or whatever.
Well, except he's not planning to go actually submit to Christian law like the deal was supposed to have. The Muslim Spaniards are not arguing in good faith, but they're just trying to get Charlemagne to take his army away. What Ganelon does, and so there's more there. Roland, when he hears the deal, he says, "No, don't do it. Don't make peace." He says, "Remember when they killed our hostages before? Or when they killed our counts before? This war you've started, wage on, make no cease. To Saragossa lead your host in the field. Spend all your life, if need be, in the siege. Revenge the men this villain made to bleed." So Roland's like, don't make peace. We know who these people are. They're not trustworthy. The French are silent. Ganelon alone accepted. Ganelon says, take the deal. Take the deal. Because we want peace. Naaman agrees with him. We should make haste to cut this great war short. And that's when they're looking for somebody to go. Everybody else wants to do the deal. Roland doesn't. And then Roland says, Gunez, my stepsire, is the man. That's Ganelon. He should go do it. And that's when Ganelon gets really mad.
He's furious, out of hand. Why do you think Roland wanted him to go do it? Because he's the first one that said we should sue for peace?
If I'm going to get overruled, you're going to go do this damn fool thing. Well, you do it. You're the one that proposed it. If they're so friendly that they're going to actually make peace and their king's going to come and become a Christian, Ganelon, you should do it.
Right. Yeah, that's the way I read it. But then Ganelon, he's such a gamma. It's like, you're trying to get me killed. Well, it was his idea in the first place. Like, if it's such a good idea, skin in the game, right? If you think it's a good idea, go do it. And then he squawks about it. Oh, you're trying to get me killed. It's like, wait a minute. So you do think it's dangerous.
Right. And I love Roland's reaction. This makes me love him. I don't know who this guy is. He's just some ancient count of, where is it, Brittany? I don't know, somewhere in northwest France. But he threatens Ganelon. He says, rather there's some deadly trick I'll play than not find vent for my unbounded rage. So he tells him, I'm going to do something nasty to you, Roland.
Yeah.
When Roland heard him, then he laughed in his face. Roland just laughs at him. It's like the bad guy's going to try to twirl his mustache and threaten you, and your reaction is, dude, your mustache sucks. I don't know. You're laughing at him.
A man of great power.
Yeah.
If I get get some big, Pyrenees, big guard dog, name him Roland.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good name.
It is a good name. It should, dear listeners out there, if you are in the family way and you're looking for good names, well, Karl's a good name in honor of Charlemagne. Mm-hmm. In fact, I'll tell you this detail. If you are in the Roman Catholic Communion, I believe Charlemagne counts as a blessed. In other words, he could be a confirmation name for you.
There you go.
He's not canonized, but he's like the next step down. Okay, so there you go. And then you got Roland. Roland is a name crying out to be used.
Yeah.
You know, people are having trouble picking names for their kids these days, I think.
You don't say.
Yeah, and you're getting some less optimal names. This would be a good one. Roland would be a good one.
Yeah, Roland. Turpin,
the fighting archbishop. I love the fighting archbishop.
Oh, he's the best guy in the whole thing. So Ganelon, he's all bent out of shape. Roland laughed at him. It's an honor culture. He laughed at him in front of his peers and betters when he goes, before that, it's been determined that Charlemagne and his armies are going to withdraw to France. It's not a retreat, you see. They're going to withdraw, and like all good, responsible military people, they put in a rear guard, and they decide that Roland will be the man in charge of the rear guard. Ganelon goes back to Spain to parley and lets them know where the rear guard will be, who will be in charge, and gives them the skinny so they can destroy Roland, essentially.
Right, and the reason for this...
Treachery!
Ganelon is talking, I think, to Blancandrin, who's one of these noble paynims. I had to look up what a paynim is. Paynim.
Heathen.
Yeah, pagan, I guess. And they start talking about Roland, and you might even give Ganelon the best motives here. If you're trying to get peace, he says in stanza 29, danger of death day by day he incurs. If one should slay him, some peace might be preserved. Roland is the one that enables the emperor to fight so well. So if we could get rid of him, we could have peace.
Wait a minute. Is he Achilles?
Is Roland Achilles?
Is he the type? Yeah.
Yeah, sort of.
Yeah.
He's Achilles-ish. But he's willing to fight.
Yeah, he doesn't refuse to fight, but he's the mainest man.
Mm-hmm. So Dorothy, our friend Dorthy Sayers, does this in English verse to try to match the original. Apparently it does rhyme, so she tries to find rhymes, and sometimes I think it's pretty good poetry. This is in 30. Quoth Blancandrin, Roland's a villain fell, presuming thus all folk on earth to quell, and every land under his yoke compel. Whom does he count on to lend his arms such strength? Ganelon answers, he counts upon the French. French and strength are supposed to rhyme.
Yeah, we're trying.
In the next one, so long rides Gunes, that's Ganelon, with Blancandrin that day, till each to each has pledged his truth and faith. They will seek means Count Roland for to slay. So they've got a deal. They're going to figure out a way to get Roland out of the way. But don't you want peace? Is Ganelon the hero?
No.
But he's trying to make peace between warring nations.
Well, yeah, but they offer him all the tripods and the fatted calves and all that, and he takes it. He's got a personal axe to grind against Roland. His motivations aren't those of peace. So Charlemagne is a man of great power. Charles Martel, his father Pepin, and he and his brother have all waged war before Roland, and they end up doing it after Roland. The idea that he's going to get rid of Patton and there's not going to be war in Europe is ridiculous. What's his end game? Okay, we get rid of Roland. Then what?
Yeah, so his motives are not necessarily great. But I think there's something else, too. So this is where this book might be a problem. Okay? Charlemagne is a defender of Christendom, and he's motivated by that. You don't necessarily want to have peace, because you don't want the foreign invader to maintain power in Spain. That would be a defeat. So he wants to defend his people and his culture, the things that he believes are right. So Roland doesn't want peace. Ganelon wants peace. I don't think you're supposed to, at least, it's not an honorable peace.
I don't think Ganelon wants peace.
Yeah, but even if he did, it wouldn't be honorable.
No. It would be short. It would be peace in his time.
Yeah.
When warriors like this live to age 34 or something like that, he's looking at peace in his time. But no, forget that.
The king likes the deal. He gives him a lot of gold, so that's another reason why you don't like Ganelon. He gets paid off.
Yep.
If he has a grudge against Roland, there's ways to deal with Roland in this culture. You challenge him.
Yeah. Yeah, he could have challenged him to a duel right then if he wanted to. When Roland said, hey, listen, if it's such a good idea, you go be the envoy. He could have just said, "We're going to the lists right now."
But he doesn't do that. He does you called him a gamma. He does that kind of sideways attack on Roland.
Yep.
Not a manly frontal attack, but a sideways attack. I'm going to get somebody else to kill you. And by the way, I'm going to make a lot of money doing it. Which is, I don't know. I don't think much of it. I'm not inspired by Ganelon. I think, yuck, I don't like him.
Mm-hmm. It's a very Tolkien-esque name, isn't it? Ganelon.
Ganelon. Sounds like a bell. I liked in stanza 42, the Paynim said, I marvel in my mind at Charlemagne, whose head is old and white. 200 years I know have passed him by, and lands so many he's conquered far and wide. Lance thrust so many he's taken in the strife, rich kings so many brought to a beggar's plight. When will he weary of going forth to fight? Never, said Gunez, while Roland sees the light. That's a nice bit of poetry.
Mm.
And Charlemagne wasn't 200 years old, but he lived a long time. From 748 to 814, how many years is that? It's almost 70.
52, 56, 66. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Especially constantly in war. Constantly in war.
So there's a little bit of poetic time compression going on in this.
Mm.
Charlemagne's made to be mythical. There's some other anachronisms in it, which you could have some fun with when you read it. And I thought a nice trick. This was very Tolkien-esque. Ganelon's sword.
So
he
good.
swears on his sword, and the sword's name is Merglace. It just sounds evil. It's got that MR sound, which means death in Latin.
Right.
Like Mordred and Morgoth and Mordor. Merglace. To people speaking Romance languages, just the name of the sword sounds bad.
Yeah, that's in stanza 46. I love it. I love all of the weapons. Charlemagne's sword. In the hilt, there's like one of Peter's teeth. there are these, what are these things called?
Relics.
In these, they're almost enchanted. He has a lance that has a splinter from the lance that pierced Christ's side while he was on the cross. You know, super cool. Is that supposed to be cool? I think it is. Crucifixion was only 750 years before this.
It was like yesterday.
Yeah, it's not crazy that they might have had some of that stuff. I don't know. Pretty neat. So I saw something cool in here, Karl. I don't remember where it is. I can't find it. I'm trying to find it, and I'm failing. Marsilion is the caliph of that region, right? So we've got all kinds of names like that, right? We've got dukes, and we have counts and earls and all that. Well, he's the caliph of his region. That
if he was in Oklahoma, he'd be the caliph.
The caliph, right? And they talk about a place in California, Califerne.
Yep.
So I go look it up, and sure enough, it seems like California, the state in the United States, was named after California in the Song of Roland because it was named, as best I can tell, California was named by a Catholic missionary named Montalvo, who had read that. How about that?
Well, that's interesting.
Describes a bunch of stuff. It explains a lot, doesn't it?
It is a name of portent.
Yes.
Yeah, so Ganelon makes his way back. He's gotten paid off. The Emperor's having bad dreams. The Emperor is Charlemagne. Well, Roland's going to go off and hold the rear guard. He's going to take the 12 peers. It's like the Justice League.
It is not like the Justice League. But that's okay.
So it's Roland and then Olivier, I guess, Oliver, his friend, and the fighting Archbishop Turpin, and a whole bunch of other people whose names I forgot. He's going to take 1,000 score. He's not going to take a big army. And here's where you start to see some of the character flaws of Roland.
1,000 score, by the way. You said it's not a big army. A score is 20. He's taking 20,000. For a skirmish.
Yeah, but Charlemagne offered him half the army.
Right.
And he says, No, I will never consent. May God confound me if I shame my descent. 1,000 score I'll keep of valiant French, safe through the passes. Go you with confidence. Never fear man so long as I draw breath. So he's taking a smaller force than he will end up needing. Why? Because there's more glory in it?
Hubris? This is all I need?
Yeah, or maybe he wants a better fight. But it turns out it's probably a mistake. Well, they didn't know that they were going to get attacked, but they had to count on it. And he doesn't take a big enough force. But the 12 peers in Spain are left behind, full 20,000 stout Frenchmen at their side. Valiant they are and have no fear to die. To the land of France their emperor homeward hies. The emperor is starting to feel bad. I really like the character of Charlemagne.
Of course. Yep.
Not just because I'm named after him, but you're laughing at that.
Were your mom and dad, is that what they said?
No, that's not what they said. I'm making that up. I'm making my story be more heroic than it actually is. But, any guy that's named Karl, where does the name come from?
Oh, yeah.
The name originally means a man, some guy. So a king would have his Karls that would fight for him. It's the root of the word churlish.
Mm-hmm.
So it comes to be like a villager, just like an ordinary person.
Dude.
Yeah. That's my name means the dude. So, no, that was not officially the person I'm named after, but I think if you've got the name, or if you have the name Charles or any of the derivatives, you're named after Charlemagne.
Chuck.
He's the first famous one.
Yep. Doesn't this make today's politics look just like a quilting bee?
How so?
Well, I've been watching politics over these last few weeks, as many of you may have.
Oh, no. Why would you do that?
Because I can't fucking avoid it. Everybody keeps cramming it in my face. The only time I can avoid it is when I've got like a chainsaw running. I'm afraid a tree is going to fall on me. That's like the only time I have an escape. So I like that. But, our politics are like, at this point, are kind of like almost everybody will disagree with me when I say this. They're like Louis XIV France. It's just a bunch of posing and like who can get on television and get an invitation to this party. Or like I don't see people that actually want to wield power. They want to portray themselves as wielding power, but they don't actually do anything. And somebody out there, I was arguing with a friend of mine, Mel, the other day, and he's like, oh, no, they do want to, but our system is set up in such a way that they can't, and that's one of the beauties of it. Okay, maybe. But the truth, I think the truth is that very few people actually wield power and do powerful things with it. And we know those people's names, actually. There's so few of those people that do it that we know their names. And there are some great ones. There's some like Julius Caesar or Charlemagne or George Washington. And there's some less great ones, and some like Stalin, perhaps. But most of the people that govern are a bunch of tea-sipping fops. How about that?
Well, let me put it a different way. They're a lot more like Ganelon than they're like Roland.
Yeah.
Okay, so the frustrating thing about politics, a big frustrating thing to me about politics is that I know that people do terrible things.
Yep.
And nothing ever happens to them.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody challenges them to a duel. There's no skin in the game. It's like they're going to do bad things and nothing's going to happen to them. Ganelon, there's skin in the game. Ganelon ends up, spoiler, being quartered. They tie his bits and they tie 4 ends of him to 4 horses.
His bits and pieces.
Split him. Yeah. And his family, 30 of his hangers-on, get killed.
Yep.
He's playing a dangerous game, and when it goes wrong, he pays a price.
Yeah, in a feudal system like this, in a governmental system like we have at this time, a ruler can exercise power greatly. Cuts both ways. You can have a despot, and that's not good. But you can also have somebody use that power for great justice, for great virtue, for great ends. And we're really not able to do either one here.
Well, it's why stories like this, I think, are appealing. people don't like, at least I don't, like stories about the sorts of rulers we have now. We like stories about kings. We like stories about Aragorn and Charlemagne and that stupid Game of Thrones thing. You're always hoping somebody would end up being a good king.
An endless story of like court closed room intrigues. Blech. So gross.
Yuck. You'd rather, I'm going to hold the marches against the Paynim hordes and I'm going to win or I'm not. You know, it's cleaner that way. Politics through, it's terrible. Politics through force of arms seems more wholesome than, I know somebody's going to yell at me on Slack. Bring it. That's fine. I'll probably disagree with me in 10 minutes anyway. So,
well, how about this? Maybe wholesome is a heavy word there to use, but it's very clean and very concrete. If somebody cuts Roland's head off, there's no hand recount. You know, we know we know what the heck is going on, and it's very, very clear who has the power in a situation like this. You may not want them to have it, but you know what's going on. Like, I don't know what the rules of the political game are right now, but in Charlemagne's day, it was pretty clear what the rules of the game were. I think in June 7th of 1944, European political games rules were pretty clear to everyone too. I don't want a bunch of people to die. I don't like that violence, but I think that's one of the reasons that these stories are compelling, is because they're clear.
We'd like it to be cleaner. I started arguing with myself while you were talking and thought, because this is what happens, dear listener. I thought, is it as clean as I think it was? I mean, this is a story. It's very clean in the story.
Sure.
In reality, not so clean. There is a guy, so I believe his name is Procopius. I don't know. There was a servant of the Emperor Justinian who wrote histories of Justinian while Justinian was alive that were very complimentary. And then as soon as Justinian was dead, or I think he might have had it published after the historian's death, it's the Secret History, which says all sorts of horrible things about Justinian.
Right.
It's the original anonymous source to tear down the king once you're safely dead and can't be harmed by him. And so that sort of thing that a lot of us don't like now, it happened then too. But I don't think people like it. They would prefer to have a story. You'd prefer to have a story where the two people come out and duel than backroom deals in smoke-filled rooms. They don't even smoke anymore.
Yeah.
Back in Adderall-filled rooms. And
Adderall's for the plebes. It's modafinil.
Modafinil. I'm not familiar with that.
That's what all the traders take, you know, all the Robin Hood traders, so they can just buzz all day and trade on the Singapore exchange in the middle of the night. I hear.
Yeah, I've never even done the now legal one.
How about a little Vivarin?
Nope. Coffee. This is as hard as I got.
Yeah.
Coffee and vodka, not together, but
no,
alternately.
You got 20,000 Frenchmen, and I think 100,000.
A whole bunch.
400,000. That's it. Marseille. Anyway, these names are inflected, so depending on how they're used, they come out different. So this Marsilion character, in 3 days, he rounds up 400,000 to bring against the 20,000 companions who in the rear guard wait, mean to give battle, and none shall say them nay.
I liked the bit. This is around 69 and following. I like the bit where all of his knights come up and say, I will find the first blow against Roland. And you get like the heroes of the bad guys.
Right.
Listed. They're all standing up and taking their place. I especially liked Margaris of Seville. I've been to Seville. In paragraph 77. Then comes at speed Margaris of Seville, who holds his lands as far as Casmarin. Ladies all love him, so beautiful he is. She that beholds him has a smile on her lips. Will she or nill she laughs for very bliss. And there's no pain in his match for chivalry. I love that description. It reminded me of the musician and artist LL Cool J.
Oh my gosh.
And I can't remember his name is James. I think it's Ladies Love Cool James.
Yep. how about that? Will she or nil she? Like we say that all the time. And then we saw, she says in here, Sayers writes, will he or nil he? And I looked and looked for the Anglo-Norman, original of this so I could go see, is that a formulation out of that Anglo-Norman? Because we still say, oh, he makes these decisions willy-nilly. That must be where it comes from. I don't know if it goes back that far or if Sayers is taking a little license here. That was interesting to see. I bet it goes back that far.
You didn't find the original text?
I didn't. Oxford has the definitive one. And if Oxford has it, you can't get it unless you get out a $100 bill.
Right. No, more than 100.
Yeah.
For the library binding. Yeah, they don't part with them cheap.
Yeah. So they give battle, and we've already been going like an hour, Karl. These 20,000 kill every one of the 400,000. Do you believe it? I believe it.
Sure. I want to believe it.
I believe all of it.
I believe everything, Scott. You should know that.
Yeah. I do too until I don't. So the problem early in the battle, so Roland and his men, his 12 peers, Oliver and Archbishop Turpin, see the dust on the horizon, and they're like, oh no, here they come. And everybody says, hey, Roland, get your Oliphant, Olifant. It's a horn, a war horn, a hunting horn, something like that, named after elephants because, they trumpet.
And nobody has ever seen an elephant.
Right.
Nobody who wrote this, the guy who wrote this poem, none of them had ever seen an elephant.
Okay, now we have to talk about Herodotus.
Okay.
Herodotus wrote the histories, and he's got all these accounts of animals that he never saw. Crocodiles in the Nile and ostriches, and it's just fanciful, crazy stuff, and it's kind of funny. But it's really great to read that. And then in the next book, they don't have chapters, right? These old books, they call them books. In the next book or the next chapter, he just gives this account, this deadpan, seemingly factual account of some historical event. Now, we've seen pictures. I've watched Wild Kingdom. I know what alligators look like. So now when I read those two in juxtaposition, I'm like, oh my God, oh no. What is history? And this is a lot like that, right? We don't know a lot about, it's written just deadpan, like this is what happened. And we really don't know what happened. Reading these old books has just ruined history for me. It's brought it alive and killed it all at once. It's amazing.
Yeah, because you don't know what they saw. The language is different. Even if you could write a history, all you can do is you can write a story.
Right.
All histories are stories. They're going to have characters in them. You're going to follow that character. Even if it's an economic history, they're going to tell a story of the numbers, of the economics. And it's a narrative. What does what's his name?
Howard Zinn?
No, I'm not talking about. The Taleb talks about the narrative fallacy.
Yeah.
Something happens after something else. You're able to connect it into a story, and you think that therefore the story is actually true.
The way the human mind works requires a narrative. It seems like we spent most of humankind's history, lifespan, I don't know, not the individual humans, but the span of the human, most of that was spent around a campfire relating information in a narrative way. You couldn't put information in tables or on a zip drive or whatever. It had to be told in a story, and it seems like that the human mind requires that to render it usable, information usable. All cows eat grass.
Do they? But that's how you remember it. Then we get this question which people will always ask, well, what really happened? And I don't mean to sound like a relativist or anything, but what do you mean by really and what do you mean by happened? Right. I'm just going to tell you another story. How do you know that my story is the real one? Well,
first of all, I said me eat peanut butter, and then I just realized that nobody else knows what that means. That's the first four hydrocarbons: methane, ethane, propane, and butane.
Oh, okay.
And then I said all cows eat grass, and you know that one. Every good boy does fine. Yeah, but so at some point it doesn't even matter what really happened, right? If the Battle of Hastings went a certain way, but the story becomes X, and Alfred's body explodes.
It was William the Conqueror.
William the Conqueror. And if that's the story, and everybody takes it as the gospel, that's good enough at some point, right?
Well, you can't. Yeah, it sounds like I'm talking against truth, but it's turtles all the way down. I think the story is actually primary and very important. Trying to figure out what actually happened, well, that's an impossible task. You can't figure out what actually happened. All you can get is a bunch of different stories and see what they have in common.
The attempt to come to what actually happened, I think, only serves to bring us to a consensus about the story.
Yeah.
And once we have a consensus about the story, we can have a culture.
Right.
Do you know the difference between yogurt and California?
The difference between yogurt and California. One is a state.
No, yogurt has a culture.
That's funny. California has a culture.
Does it?
Depends where you go in California.
Yeah, that's
not Los Angeles. There's no there.
Right.
But Northern California.
Yeah.
Go out in the farm country.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Or even the wine country.
Let's say if there was some way we could grade this and it was 41% true, but we have no way of knowing what the other 59% is. Does it matter that it's not dead nuts accurate?
Well, why do you want to know the past anyway? I find Roland inspiring. I'd like to be like Roland, except I'd blow the damn horn sooner.
Yeah. Stanza 85. Companion Roland, your elephant now blow. Charles in the passes will hear it as he goes. Trust me, the French will all return right so. Now, God forbid, Roland makes answers wroth, that living man should say he saw me go, blowing of horns for any Paynim flow. Ne'er shall my kindred be put to such reproach when I shall stand in this great clash of hosts. I'll strike 1,000 and then 700 strokes. Blood red the steel of Durandal shall flow. Stouter the French that will do battle bold. These men of Spain shall die and have no hope.
Yeah, so no, I'm not going to blow it for them.
Right.
His sword's named Durandal. There's some more Tolkien there for you.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I don't know that I know he must have read Song of Roland.
Had to have. I mean, if I've read it.
Probably in the original.
Probably.
And I like in 87. So Oliver is saying we need to do this, and eventually Oliver's going to be proved right. And they fight a little bit. In 87, Roland is fierce and Oliver is wise, and both for valor may bear away the prize. I love that line. Mm-hmm. Would they say that about us? Karl is fierce and Scott is wise.
I don't know. I'm not very valorous. I'm just a shopkeeper, man.
Well, that's another question here. What counts for valor here? Why are these noble knights? What is it that they can do that makes them valorous? Well, they can fight.
Yeah, and this kind of fighting is particularly nasty. I mean, we read the Iliad and we talk about that. We read Caesar's Gallic War, whatever, talk about that. And this is particularly nasty. You're going to be within arm's reach of somebody, and one of you is going to hack the other one into pieces, just hack chunks off of them. It's a lot different than being a bombardier on a Mitchell bomber or something over Dresden.
Which is bad enough.
Plenty bad. Looking through a scope and dropping the hammer on somebody. That's rough. This stuff is, ugh. I don't know anything about this kind of thing, but I have read that there are some studies that show that people who are closer to the gore often have less PTSD than the ones that weren't close to it.
That's interesting.
I don't know if that's the case, but I have read that.
Well, so I'm going to go lift after this because my coach has put me on a 6-day program.
Are you bodybuilding now?
I don't know. He knows I'll do it,
right.
The jerk.
Is it leg day, bro?
He knows I'll do it. Well, one of the days is supposedly optional, but I bet if I skip the optional day, I'll hear about it. But one of the things I like about it is In the modern world, I do not know what valor is. Valor, arete, glory. I don't know what the goodness of a man is, much less of a woman. I have 3 daughters. I don't know what the good is anymore. All the rules have changed. Everything's changing. Is it my skill in navigating corporate America? Well, I'm not very good at that. Should I go into politics? How do you show your quality? How do you show your worth? Well, I don't know, but I'm going to go and press a whole bunch of weight over my head today and then do some cruddy deadlifts. That's my program today. That, none of my neighbors can do.
Mm-hmm.
There's some valor. That's clean to me. It's not fighting with a sharpened bit of steel nose to nose with somebody else in the fields of Spain, but it's something that I can understand. And so stories like this, where it seems clean to me, yeah, it's violent, they're going to kill each other, but you know how good they are. I mean,
mm-hmm.
You know what counts as, you can measure Roland's worth. It's pretty darn good, except he doesn't blow the horn early enough. He's not good at words or good at beating the margins on a stock trade or something. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's not what Rolands are for, though.
What are they for?
Heaping up the Saracen bodies.
Yeah, they're for protecting your people.
Yeah.
And so it's not that I want to have to grab a sword. No, I do have a sword. It doesn't have a handle, though. I don't want to have to grab my sword and go stand out in front of my house and fight people. But on the other hand, it would almost be refreshing, because then I would know if I won or not. And I would know if I counted, if
oh gosh,
I was weighed in the balance and found good enough.
Right.
It would be very obvious.
Ugh.
People love these sort of fantasy stories. This isn't a fantasy story, but they love these sorts of stories which have clear heroes, clear, simple heroes, like Lord of the Rings. The good guys are all very simple. There's a task, they do it.
We're going to get emails from veterans about this, saying we don't know what we're talking about and blah, blah, blah. And you're 100%
Absolutely,
right.
I don't.
100% right. I don't want anybody to die. I don't want to kill people. I don't want other people killing people. But in terms of a story, in terms of a narrative, in terms of teaching lessons through epic song or whatever like this, it makes it very clean, right? You know who the good guys are. You know who the bad guys are. The outcome is understandable. There's a reason why kids read stories and learn about honor from reading about King Arthur, and not by reading Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy or watching Yes Minister or House of Cards or some shit like that. That's what Karl's saying. Let me just put it in.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, I'm not the most, I'm not, I don't know if I'm as anti-war as you, but I'm pretty anti-war. But I'm pro-valor. Does that make sense?
You bet. And I think the more valor you have, the less likely you are to get into a war. Ooh.
Yeah, maybe. Should we go back to the story?
Stupid story. Yeah, so they're coming. Oliver says, "Look, Roland." He actually says, "Look, Roland, they're in sight. Charles is far off, and these are very nigh. You would not sound your elephant for pride. Had we the emperor, we should have been all right. To gate of Spain, turn now and lift your eyes. See for yourself the rear guard's woeful plight." So Roland says, "Look, they're coming." Or Oliver tells him, "Look, they're coming. You can see it." Oliver's another good name, except you don't want him to shorten it to Ollie. It's not good. And then the bloodshed starts. We're just a few stanzas away from starting to kill a whole bunch of people. And it's on. It's on. And this is a lot like the Iliad. They just describe how into his horse he strikes his spurs of gold. Right barrenly he rides to smite the foe. He breaks the shield. He cleaves the hauberk close. Clean through his breast drives lance and pennant both. A spear's length that flings him dead from the saddle bow. Looks down and sees the infidel lie low. I mean, there's just stanza after stanza of through to the flesh he cleaves the hauberk mail. Through to the heart he drives the good spear straight. The Paynim falls flat down with all of his weight. Then Satan comes and hales his soul away. A lot of people getting their hands hacked off. A lot of hands getting hacked off, which I had never really thought about. Of course that happened.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of mighty men striking down on someone's helm. just splitting their head right down to their chin or right down to their chest. And at some point, I think it was Turpin struck someone and went through his helmet, down through his head, through his neck, through his torso, and into the horse the guy was on.
Wow, that's a mighty blow. A valorous blow, Archbishop.
Yep. I love the idea of a fighting Archbishop. Love that.
Yeah, I do too. This is... Let me go back to my earlier thing. So about cleaner fighting, we have bishops in my communion. Okay. And they're usually middle management types.
Right.
And they don't rock the boat. Whatever the company line is, they follow it because it's where they get their job. I could get into ecclesiology and then Thomas Maris would probably yell at me. But I remember the story. There's a story of the emperor. This is back 1,700 years ago, 1,600 years ago. The emperor wants to get Basil the Great, bishop of, where is he bishop of? Somewhere in Cappadocia, to do something. And sends him an envoy and says, you need to do this, you need to do this. And Basil says, I'm not doing it. No, go away.
Make me.
He doesn't say that. He says, I'm not doing it. The servant of the emperor says, I can't believe you're speaking to me this way. And Basil says, well, you've never met a bishop before. Like, bishop means a superhero, you know? Basil didn't care. He had one cloak because the Bible said, if you have two cloaks, give one to the poor. So you only had one cloak, you know? He didn't have anything. He had his dignity in his job, and he didn't care what happened to him. And I like that. I would like bishops to be like that. And maybe be even like Turpin, walking around with a sword.
Any leader over something that matters. Not the employee handbook, but when stuff matters, you want any leader to be that way. Basil, that's another good name.
Yep, it means king.
And you got your first sergeant, Basil Plumley. You've seen that We Were Soldiers movie?
No, I haven't.
Oh, Karl. I've only seen like 9 movies.
I've seen thousands, but they're all bad.
Yeah, Mel Gibson and, oh my gosh, Sam Elliott. Sam Elliott plays him. And powerful guy. Another man of power. Yeah, Basil Plumley.
And so in paragraph 113, the good archbishop observes him. This is this guy, Abisme. That's a great bad guy name. The good archbishop observes him much displeased. He'd like to hit him on sight. That's how he feels. And to himself he says quite quietly, this Saracen looks right heretic to me. 'Twere best by far to go and kill the beast. I never loved cowards nor coward deeds. He looks like a heretic. I'm going to go fight him.
Yep. Turpin lays on nor spares, I tell you true. After he hit it, it was not worth a sou. From flank to flank, he spits his body through and flings him flank to flank. He just cuts him right down to the hips, Yeah. A valiant blow and shrewd, right strong to save is our archbishop's crook.
Oh, gosh. Dear listener. All right. So if you wanted us to teach the Song of Roland to you, at this point, I would be...
I don't even know what to say.
I don't know, tut-tutting about... I don't know. I would have some plan, but... I don't care about the plan. I care that Turpin's deeds thrill me, and I'm more interested in me than in some teacher's theory about the Song of Roland. I'm having a great time reading this stuff. You can analyze a work and teach it and put it into PowerPoint. That's the surest way to kill it. You just kill it dead. No one will care about it.
Yeah. So gross. There's nothing more sterile than a classroom and a dry erase board with.
Why do we read literature anyway? Do you read it to learn something? I read stereo instructions to learn something.
No, you do it to get a certificate so you can get a job.
No. You read it because it's glorious. You read it because it brings life to your soul.
Yep. I live in Rogers County, Karl.
I've heard that.
They've got duchies. And dukes own those, or rule over those. And then counts rule over counties.
Yep.
Yeah, we kind of don't think about that. But like our whole world is just suffused through the litter from this world, from this era. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's important. Whether it really happened this way or not, the story is important because we've had it for nigh 1,000 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, an account comes from I think it's the word comites, means the companions. It's the companions of the king.
Yeah.
That's where your county comes from. I'm in Cook County.
Everybody gets killed except Roland. Roland's last man standing.
Yeah.
Stanza 134. We're reading the Dorthy Sayers translation of this. It's everywhere out there. You can just type in Dorthy Sayers, Song of Roland PDF, and you'll find it. 134.
I have a physical copy in my hands.
I should have. The county Roland with pain and anguish wins his Oliphant and blows with all his might. Blood from his mouth comes spurting scarlet bright. He bursts the veins of his temples outright. From hand and horn the call goes shrilling high. So when it's time to blow, he blows so hard, he aneurysms and dies. King Karl hears it, who through the passes rides. Duke Naiman hears it, and all the French beside. Quoth Charles, I hear the horn of Roland cry. He never sounded, but in the thick of fight. There is no battle, the Count Ganelon replies. You're growing old, your hair is sere and white. When you speak thus, you're talking like a child. Full well you know, Roland is overweening pride. 'Tis strange that God... Ganelon's, no, you don't hear the horn. There's nothing going on back there. What a villain.
Yeah.
What a villain. And he knows good and well that if the rear guard fails, nearly 500,000 enemies will flow into his home nation. And what happens?
He doesn't care. He's already been paid off.
Right. He gets his calves and his tripods and, all that stuff.
In 136, the Emperor Charles lets sound his horns aloft, so we have answering horns. And a thrilling moment when you hear the sound of the horns. They're supposed to sound that way. They're supposed to call you to battle. Have you ever heard bagpipes?
I like to deadlift to bagpipes, by the way.
That's awesome. That's designed to be a similar thing. You'd hear that echoing across the hills, and you'd know it's time to go get your sword. Get ready. It's calling you. So if like that, oh, Danny boy, the pipes are calling from glen to glen. That's not like pan pipes. That's bagpipes calling you to battle. It's a thrilling sound. The horns would be something similar. I mean, that's what a trumpet originally was for, is to give the signals.
Yeah, the French horn's a hunting horn. Call the hounds. Yeah.
There's a whole lot of Tolkien in this. I mean, a whole lot of Roland and Tolkien. The Boromir's blowing the horn at the very end of, it's my favorite scene in the whole books, when he's repented of his wrongdoing and he's blowing the horn to try to get his companions to come back and defend his friends. And of course, nobody answers. But there's something, I don't know, some kind of ancestral thing going on with this talk of horns blowing. Is it just me?
No.
I should have named my trumpet Oliphant.
Yeah, or Roland. See? The keyboards. Well, they named it Oliphant. Animals trumpet and bellow, and there's something going on there. It makes your hair on your head stand up. You're around that.
I love what they do to Ganelon. They figured out that Ganelon is a traitor. This is in 137. And he's so low and nasty. He gets imprisoned by the cook.
Right.
Did you catch that?
Yeah. The master cook he calls, Besgan by name. Guard me him well, as fits a man so base. For all my house this villain has betrayed. I would imagine that the cook has some leg irons, and they'll bring him a beef, and he'll, he'll chain up a cow or whatever, and then butcher it. The cook, he's equipped for this.
He's probably got the hardware.
Yeah. Around his neck they fasten a strong chain. Right well they chain him like a bear in a cage. Now on a pack horse they've hoisted him in shame. Till Karl won him, 'tis they will keep him safe.
Well, imagine what sort of man you'd have to be a cook in the year 800.
With 4 sound thumps, each gives... So the cook and his sous chefs, I don't know who they are, all come up. He says they pluck the beard from off his chin and face. With 4 sound thumps, each gives him a good baste. With sticks and faggots, they pound him and they paste. They beat him with sticks and hot coals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, golly. I like that. That's justice.
Well, he's got it coming,
It's treason. I know that becomes a question, but it's treason.
Yeah. Did you notice that the dying Oliver gives Roland a blow?
Yeah.
On the way out?
Yeah,
it's like,
I did.
You didn't blow the horn. So I'm going to swat you. And it's not why he does it. He does it because he's delirious and he can't see. But
yeah, Oliver's delirious, and Roland stumbles over to him, and Oliver smites him on the helm. It doesn't kill him. He's like, "Oh, I didn't know it was you," but Roland deserves it. Is Roland a good leader?
His flaw is his courage.
Our virtues are always our problems.
Or they're often our problems. Yeah. Your prowess, Roland, is a curse on our heads. That's in 131. And then the Archbishop hears them fighting and says, "Play nice, boys." Mm-hmm. And they do. So this isn't Agamemnon and Achilles.
No. I love Oliver. I love Turpin. It's wonderful. Yeah, there's a lot of crap out there nowadays about leadership and studying leadership. I don't know how much you can study that. If you think about Roland and you're like, what can I learn about leadership from Roland? Well, I don't know, man. When 400,000 Panem are bearing down on you, are you going to remember what you read about Roland, or is your true mettle just going to have out? Can you build a leader? Roland is a good leader in that he can actually get out in front and do the thing he wants his followers to be able to do, but he's a blunt instrument. Maybe he's not the decision maker. That's why he's not Charlemagne,
Mm-hmm.
He's not righteous like Turpin. He doesn't have a higher motivation behind this. He likes doing it.
Yeah, he likes to fight.
He's born for the fray.
So he probably likes to fight too much. That's his flaw. And that's what caused him not to blow the horn and caused his people to get routed after killing 100,000 of the enemy. But, well, it's in defense of his homeland.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't have any doubts. He's not making deals. This is the job. He's going to do it. He could have done it better had he been less rash, less, his flaw, his hubris. If he'd had a little bit less of that.
If he had blown the horn and Charlemagne had come back with his army, they could have enveloped the host of the enemy and done away with this. I mean, it would have been over. Now, later on, they rout the enemy and they drown in the Elbe, right? Isn't that what it is?
Oh, I can't remember.
I can't remember which river it is, but they drown. They kill a bunch of them, and the ones they don't kill have to do a river crossing in armor and drown. I like that.
Where does Turpin die?
Oh, gosh, I don't know. It's before 137. He dies before Oliver, right?
Yeah. I forget the line, but it's something about many good sermons he'd preached and many blows dealt. I love it. That's the mark of a good archbishop in those days. He preached well and he fought well. We don't have that anymore. Maybe either one. I don't know. I shouldn't talk church stuff.
Charlemagne hears the horn, answers the horn, shows up. Everybody's pretty much dead. Gathers up Roland's sword, which is good, and his horn, which is good. The horn's broken, and gives chase.
Hold on. I want to read a line that I really like. This is paragraph 225. One of the things that I really like about Roland being an older gentleman, or well, at least I'm older, it's the old dudes that come and win.
Mm-hmm.
So, describing the 10 columns of soldiers that Charlemagne is going to use in this fight. In the 10th column stand lords of France arrayed, 100,000 of our best captains they. Proudly they bear them, their bodies are full straight, their heads are grizzled, and all their beards are gray. Ugh.
Yep.
That's what you old people are supposed to do. You're supposed to defend your clan. You're supposed to defend your people. Well, or at least that appeals very much to me. This is what you're for. That's why you're still alive.
You're supposed to buy an RV and spend every last groat so your kids have nothing, right? You're supposed to make sure that the whole system is set up so that every single person in the entire country has to spend 30 years of their life paying for a house when all of their forefathers had a place to live.
No, I think you're supposed to build your hall and defend it.
And then you get a reverse mortgage on it and you buy an RV, right?
No,
so that your kids have to go buy their own home. even though you already paid for one?
No. You have to pay cash for the RV, or you can't get it. Sorry. You can't. No, you can't. No. Don't go into debt for your rolling house at the end of your life.
Right. No. You pay your house off, see, and then you do a reverse mortgage on the house, and then you take the payment out of the reverse mortgage for the house and buy your Prevost motor coach.
And then, yeah, I don't know. I want to be the grizzled captain with my beard being gray.
Oh, I'm going to write a check on my deathbed and it'll bounce.
I don't think that's right. I think you should be building up your people. I don't know. This appeals to me very much. It hits my personal sense of what a man ought to do.
Right.
I have 5 children. My job is to defend them. My job is to raise them to be good and to fight things that make them not good. My job is not to enjoy my life. I want to go to the very end because I want to go to the last paragraph on this topic. So this is 291. He's just done the great deed. He's actually converted the wife of the Saracen king.
Yeah, he did.
So he's done her a good deed by his lights. The king's abed involved to chamber high. St. Gabriel comes, God's courier, to his side. Up, Charles, assemble thy whole imperial might. With force and arms into Elbira ride. Needs must thou succour King Vivian where he lies. At Imphe his city, besieged by Paynim tribes. There for thy help the Christians call and cry. Small heart had Karl to journey and to fight. God, says the king, how weary is my life. He weeps, he plucks his flowing beard and white. Here ends the jest Tyroldist would recite.
He's got to go do it again.
He doesn't want to go back and do it, but it's his job. He wants to get the RV.
His golden years, Karl.
Well,
his golden years.
Well, in this story, you spend your golden years fighting for your land, for your people.
Well, how about this? Is there a year when you don't, whether you're 18 or you're 31 or you're 60? Is there a year when you don't?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I don't know how old Roland is in this. Let's say he's 22, 26. He's the flower of their soldiery, and they send him in. But these guys are ready to put their thumb in the dike and stem the tide whenever they need to. In England during World War II, they had the Home Guard.
Mm-hmm.
And it was World War I veterans and older people that they had trained up and armed with, in many cases, hunting rifles that Americans had donated and sent to England. I like that.
I don't know. The evacuation of Dunkirk.
Mm-hmm.
How did they get them out of there? Fishing boats?
However the heck they could.
Just everybody who had a boat showed up? That's what you're supposed to do.
But before you even get to that, there has to be things worth fighting for.
Yep.
Before you figure out who's going to fight, you've got to have things that are worth fighting for.
Yeah. Yep, you do. So you need to, I don't know. Culture's important. Belief's important. The story that is important. What do you think is true? Who are you? You're deucing on the RVs. I'm a senior citizen. No, you're a father. You're a patriarch. And that means you got to lead and take care of your people. And then maybe you can get the RV. I don't know. I really like that the soldiers that finally come and win are all the old guys.
Yeah.
That's pretty thrilling to me. It's probably my own concerns because I'm going to be 50 this year if I make it.
Yep.
That's a long time. That's half a century.
Yeah.
But, dear listener, I'm still stronger than you.
Yeah.
Well, I might not be, but if you're stronger than me, you're pretty strong. Let's put it that way.
The old guys can be stout, for sure. There's a problem. They get back to home base, and they still got this Ganelon guy to deal with. And nobody has any doubt but what he did some sort of wrong. The problem is figuring out what kind of wrong did he do. Was he just heaping revenge on Roland, Or was it treason?
So vengeance would be acceptable. Treason would not be.
Well, would it be acceptable or more acceptable?
I don't know about under Charlemagne, but I know in the Salic law, which is a little bit earlier, you could fight a duel. You could kill people. You'd have to pay money.
Mm-hmm.
But personal matters of honor were not ruled out. So if he had a grievance against Roland, there are ways to do this.
Right.
But the way to do it is not get your king's army suckered into a valley and killed.
So the way they decide this, they didn't vote. They didn't have attorneys argue and then a jury decide. One guy says, well, I'm taking this side. It was treason. Another guy says, no. It was just revenge. And then those two guys fight it out, and whoever wins, it's divine providence. God has told us what it was. And lo and behold, the treason guy wins.
Yeah. And then bad things happen to Ganelon.
They draw and quarter him.
Yeah.
They tie a horse to each one of his limbs and then put these horses in a dead run and pull him apart. You know, Karl, horses have really good traction, better than most tired or wheeled vehicles. You know, a horse can get in the mud and pull a tractor out that's stuck, and he's supposedly 1 horsepower, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And they're capable of doing, for short periods of time, exerting an enormous amount of power. So maybe 1 horse is 1 horsepower if you have him walk in a circle around a grist mill for an hour. But for brief peaks, much, much higher, orders of magnitude more power for instance. Like we know that from a power clean, right? Or from a human and power clean.
Well, and they did, so this is in paragraph 289. This is gruesome stuff. It is Middle Ages.
Yeah.
They get medieval on him. They decree death by torture, but it's not very long of a torture because I can't imagine he lived longer than 20 seconds once he'd been quartered. They get 4 high-mettled stallions, exceeding fleet. They tie him to the stallions. 4 sergeants take them and urge them at full speed towards a mare running loose in a field.
There's some mare in heat, and they send these war horses after her.
And they quarter Ganelon like a chicken, and he's dead. 'Twere wrong. Ganelon's dead, so perish all his breed. 'Twere wrong that treason should live to boast the deed. That's some harsh justice. But he got 20,000 of your people killed for a personal vengeance.
Yeah.
Seems fair.
I'm all for it. Our friend Thad, who is an OGB seminar host, I had breakfast with him this morning, and he led a seminar over, I think, Socrates' kind of death trilogy, right? Apology, Crito. You end up talking about justice. He's tried in some weird trial and is found guilty of corrupting the youth of Athens and is made to drink the hemlock. You guys know the story. If you don't know the story, you got to go read it. It's amazing. It's fun to read, and it's really good literature, and it's important. And anytime you do a seminar about those, you're going to talk about, what are criminal punishments? Well, I say, wait a minute. What are sentences in criminal trials for? What purpose do they serve? Is a murder conviction, is that a punishment for the murderer? Is it a deterrent for would-be murderers? And those are the things that people typically argue about. But if I ever lead a seminar, I like to ask them, well, aren't we just taking a psychopath out of the gene pool? Aren't we taking someone aren't we putting down a biting dog so that he doesn't have pups?
Well, what if he already had pups?
Well, if he already had pups in this case, so perish all his breed. They kill, most of his family too, right? Maybe that's how you get a high-trust society.
Treason needs to have consequences.
Karl, you didn't say anything about that. Maybe you do that for 500 years, you get a high-trust society, You kill all the biting dogs for 500 years, and you don't even know what biting dogs are anymore.
But on the other hand, okay, let me go on the other hand here. So Ganelon is clearly guilty.
This is what we do in seminar.
Okay?
Yeah.
So there's no doubt about this. I am, for the most part, not a death penalty guy, but it's not for the reason that I think it's never permitted. It's because I know how the justice system works.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to get it wrong. And you can't unring that bell.
Right.
Ganelon, you know he's plotting against you. You let him live, he's going to plot against you again. So I don't know that Charlemagne could have allowed him to live.
Yeah. Stakes are high. Clearly, 20,000 people are dead already.
Yes, I think he had it coming. I don't weep for Ganelon. I don't know. Somebody will.
Not his offspring. They're gone.
Well, what do they say? When you go after the king, you better not miss. I don't know. I loved this Song of Roland more than I thought I would. I got some other of these chivalric romances, and they never really grabbed me very much. This one does. It's much more direct than some of the Arthurian stuff, in my opinion. There's no magic. Very little. No, there's no magic. There's some miracles, but it's straightforward, simple. The characters are easy to get to. Roland is charming and a little stupid, and his fights with Oliver are funny. Turpin galloping around the battlefield killing heretics is interesting. I actually enjoyed it, not just because it's something that I should have read.
Yeah, I enjoyed it too. And it's something you probably should read. It's about, Charlemagne. Charlemagne's one of the most important people of the West. He's in the top 5, right?
Yeah, you ought to know something about Charlemagne. This isn't necessarily the greatest way. This will teach you the story of how big a deal he was. But, I mean, the facts of the story are pretty minimal. There was a Roland. He did get ambushed. They did get killed. The rest of the story is made up for the most part. But Charlemagne's a big deal you ought to know about.
I go back to my thing about history. Like, is this 60% of the Charlemagne lore? I don't know. It's a significant piece of the lore about Charlemagne. Does it matter how factually correct it is?
Matters a little.
It does matter a little, but does it matter a lot?
Well, if you're looking at Charlemagne as a heroic figure that can inspire you, then maybe the story's... I mean, the real story is pretty good. The more real story is pretty good. When they ambushed him and made him emperor, I thought that was interesting. Hey, all you Romans, if you have that filioque in your church, do you know that's Charlemagne's fault? Because he liked it. He's a momentous figure. So you go to church and you say, and your church, which most of them will say the Spirit proceeds from the Father and the Son. That's because Charlemagne liked that formulation. That's momentous. That's a big deal in world history. That's a big motive for the split between the two big churches. And where did that come from? It's not in the original creed. It's Charlemagne liked it, so it's a big deal.
How about that France thing?
Is there still a France?
There's an idea of France, and that's largely because that's a big deal.
There's still a France.
I got some stuff more stuff like this I want to read. These early Piers Plowman, I haven't read that. I'd like to get that at some point. I'd like to read some of the Icelandic sagas. Our podcasts about these things that we read are never exhaustive. So we're not going to get it all. Next week, we're going to read Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard by Thomas Gray. A little verse from the 1600s, I think. We'll read that and talk about it. We're going to do something kind of weird or new or different.
Yep, we're going to do a visual.
Yeah, we're going to do a podcast about a painting. How about that? Blah. It's going to be tough. What's the name of that painting, Karl?
I don't know. Thanksgiving, Norman Rockwell. We'll post a link.
There's a painting by Norman Rockwell of a Thanksgiving dinner. It's called Freedom from Want. And Grandma, it looks like Grandma, is putting the turkey, it's on a platter, and she's placing it on the middle of the table in front of Granddad. He's at the head of the table, and all the family smiling and looking at the turkey and looking at each other and getting ready for that dinner, Freedom from Want.
Well, don't spoil it.
That's what we're gonna talk about. Go look at the darn painting. I can't spoil it. You can go look at it. It's right there. It's going to be a good one. You know what? Norman Rockwell is not Thomas Kincaid.
No.
He's not in that. Well, clearly he's not, right? But what I mean is, it's not the same kind of thing. It's not commercial pap.
It's commercial, but it's really good.
Right. Yeah, I think so. So Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard, Thomas Gray, and then we'll talk about that. And that'll be a Thanksgiving show. Thanksgiving is probably, it's darn near my favorite holiday.
Are you going to have pumpkin pie?
Nope.
Are you going to have turkey?
Yes.
Nobody really likes turkey.
You're probably right. But it's not vile like that old gourd pie that everybody eats. We're good people, so we'll be eating pecan pie. We'll have your choice of turkey or ham, and we'll have good dressing, not stuffing. We put it in a pan and cook it because we're good people, and it's going to be good. There are no gifts necessary, which I love about Thanksgiving. Yeah, I think that's my favorite one. It's the low-pressure holiday, and the weather's good.
Yeah, it is always a big deal for us. It's going to be hard this year. So many of you will probably find that your celebrations that you typically had aren't going to happen. Well, you can spend a little time with us. We probably shouldn't have waited till the very end to plug the podcast, but I'm going to plug it right now. As you may know, Spotify and some other people have gotten into the podcast game. It means the game has changed. And so they're pushing their big people like, I don't know, some former presidential wives now have podcasts that they're pushing, and Joe Rogan is the big gorilla in this, and he's not very big, but his podcast is big, and they're pushing him and all sorts of other things.
Let me add there, they're not just pushing him just cause. They have actually paid to have exclusive rights to publish that content, so they have a financial incentive to put theirs ahead of ours in the search results.
Yeah. So we're not necessarily going to get a lot of organic growth. People aren't going to see us on the top 10 list, which is where you come in. If you have stuck it to the end of the Song of Roland with me ranting about old guy strength and Scott ranting about RVs, then you clearly think this is a good show. If you've gotten this far. And, well, do what you do with good things with your friends and say, hey, why don't you listen to this? So just give us a referral every now and then, and we'll try to keep growing this thing. We think it's a good product, and obviously you do, or you wouldn't be this far 2 hours into a podcast. So if you could help us out, that would be great.
Yeah. And remember, enrollment will open at Online Great Books at midnight, I believe, on December 7th. And this show, we try to drop this show at 10 a.m. Central Time on Thursdays, so mark your calendar for that. It'll be out there. Thank you guys so much for listening.